We are joined by Florida Congresswoman Paulina Luna, whose district is in the path of Hurricane Milton. Congresswoman, it's good to see you and welcome. Your constituents are still recovering from the impact from Hurricane Helene. How are they holding up, number one, and how are preparations for Milton in your district going?
I mean, I think a lot of people, we had over 55,000 people that were impacted by Helene, and much of our barrier islands actually were completely ruined after Helene. So when we got word less than, 2 weeks later that another hurricane was coming through, and now this time, instead of being off the coast about 100 miles, basically directly at us, obviously nerve-wracking. There's a lot of people that have already evacuated. Thank goodness. They had mandatory evacuation zones A through C, and then also recommended everyone else leave. But, for us, we're tracking these updates, and it is nerve-wracking because if this hits Tampa Bay, if this hits Pinellas County, it's going to be absolutely catastrophic. And so even though it's projected to hit a little bit south of us now, I think in Sarasota region, that is still going to be an incredibly damaging and deadly storm surge. I think we're hearing up to now 15 feet in some areas. And so we're hoping, obviously, that this can just slow down. Obviously, we don't want to send it anywhere else. We just don't want it to hit us at this powerful magnitude. But it's obviously disheartening, especially right now after finding out that FEMA has spent over $1.01 billion on illegals.
Yeah, you know what? And you took me where I wanted to go, because when I was growing up, there were certain areas where politics didn't come into play. It was national security, it was the law, and it was disaster relief. So let's talk about FEMA. They're pushing back on criticism of the federal government's handling of the storm, saying criticizing your government is dangerous. Many in the storm zone would say the government's response is dangerous. What do you say?
I'd say if you want to see how it's properly done, look at what Governor DeSantis is actively doing in handling this like a champ, in comparison with what happened in North Carolina and North Carolina's response that they received from the Biden administration. Instead of sending in active duty military right away, they waited about a week to send almost 1,000 soldiers into recovery efforts. And by that time, people died. And the fact is that we have friends that are on the ground there currently. They said that they were sending out cadaver dogs to find people, and they weren't actually finding anyone. They were finding entrails left of people. And so this is not just happening in a war zone. It's happening in the United States. And it's really awful to know that our federal government, instead of, focusing on the relief efforts, has been giving that funding away. Then they double down on it. And now you're finding out that instead of focusing on actually assisting here, communities here in Florida, that Kamala Harris is choosing this time to fight with Governor DeSantis because she's trying to make this a political talking point. But there are people's lives on the lines, to include Democrats and independents that may have voted for her otherwise. And so I think that she's her own worst enemy. We see that even Biden has been critical about her response and says that he has no issues with communicating with Mayor Castor or Governor DeSantis. And so I'm hoping that people can just get back to really what's important here, and that's saving people's lives.
Yeah, Joe Biden actually praising Governor DeSantis, saying he's doing a, quote, good job in the storm response. And you mentioned the money that was supposed to be dedicated for America and an emergency response going to the care and feeding of illegal aliens, a Democrat-created set of crises. The White House just sent millions more of taxpayer dollars to Lebanon. With no congressional vote needed, but they say the White House says Congress needs to get back to appropriate more money for American victims of the storm. Many are accusing the Harris-Biden regime of a lackluster response due to the fact that these states are Republican-leaning and the Republicans are the ones suffering. What do you make of all that talk? Do you buy that?
I think that there are bureaucrats, and I definitely think that there's a rift within this current administration. I actually just heard from Jack Posobiec, who's an independent journalist, that, while this is all happening and while we're trying to focus on getting federal assistance and also coordinating with the National Guards, you have Jill Biden and Kamala Harris's staffers that are fighting allegedly because of the drama that's unfolding in the White House. And so I'm glad that, Harris's running mate, Waltz, understands how important this is. He activated his National Guard to respond to Florida. I'm glad that Biden has a sense of grasp of how bad this is. But, Kamala Harris seems to be more concerned with going on podcast shows like Call Her Daddy than actually focusing on issues that are affecting us in Florida. And so it has been disappointing to see, but I'm not, surprised by it. Look at what she did with our southern border. This is just another list that she has of botched things that she could have fixed and she instead made worse.
Yeah, call her daddy. That is about her speed, if you know her history. Congresswoman Paulina Luna, it is great to finally meet you. Come back soon.